This isn't a place for people like you. The words land softly, almost polite, but sharp enough to slice through everything Maya Johnson thought she still had left. The rain has soaked through her coat, clinging to her skin as she stands at the edge of the marble entrance, heels damp, fingers curled tightly around the strap of a worn leather bag. Inside, warm golden light spills across polished floors, laughter echoing beneath crystal chandeliers, every voice smooth, confident, belonging. Outside, she feels like a shadow pressed against glass. The man at the velvet rope doesn't look at her again. He doesn't need to. The judgment was already delivered in a single glance. Maya exhales slowly, steadying herself, because she has learned how to do that. To stand still when the world tries to move her. To breathe when pride tells her to run. She turns slightly, catching her reflection in the glass door. Secondhand coat. Water dripping from the hem. Eyes tired but unbroken. For a second, she almost smiles, because she's seen worse. Behind the glass, a man watches. Ethan Carter, 42, billionaire, tailored suit, posture precise, the kind of man who doesn't just walk into rooms, he owns them. His gaze lingers for half a second longer than it should. Not curiosity, not kindness, recognition. He has seen this moment before, just never from this distance. The rejection, the quiet humiliation, the invisible line between who belongs and who doesn't. And yet, he says nothing. Not when the host steps closer to usher Maya away. Not when the laughter ripples again, softer now, disguised as something else. Because silence is easier. Because silence costs nothing. Maya steps back into the rain, the cold wrapping around her like something familiar. She doesn't cry. Not here. Not where anyone can see. Instead, she lifts her chin, straightens her shoulders, and walks. Each step deliberate. Controlled. Dignity held together by sheer will. Inside, Ethan watches her leave. Something unsettled flickers beneath the surface, quick and unwelcome. He reaches for his drink, but doesn't take a sip. The room feels louder now. The laughter sharper. The polished conversations hollow. For a moment, he sees the reflection of himself in the glass where she stood. Perfect. Untouched. Completely alone. Minutes pass. Maybe less. But something shifts. Because Ethan Carter does not chase people. He doesn't change decisions. He doesn't step outside of carefully constructed lines. And yet, he sets his glass down. Walks past the guests. Past the music. Past everything that has always defined him. And pushes through the doors into the rain. Maya is halfway down the block when she hears his voice behind her. Calm. Controlled. Like everything else about him. Wait. She doesn't stop immediately. She has learned not to. But something in the tone makes her pause. She turns slowly, rain catching in her lashes, and for the first time, she really looks at him. Not the suit. Not the wealth. Him. You were turned away, he says, as if stating a fact that needs no explanation. Maya lets out a quiet breath, something almost like a laugh, but without humor. That happens. There's no bitterness in her voice. Just truth. And that, more than anything, catches him off guard. Ethan studies her for a moment, measuring, calculating, the way he always does. But this isn't business. Not exactly. I can change that, he says finally. Maya's brow tightens slightly. Change what? He steps closer, rain darkening the shoulders of his expensive coat, something unfamiliar settling into his voice. Your situation. The words hang there, heavy, deliberate. Maya doesn't respond right away. She's heard promises before. Seen what they cost. Nothing changes for free, she says quietly. Ethan's lips press into a faint, almost approving line. No, he agrees. It doesn't. A pause. The city hums around them, headlights slicing through the rain, distant sirens echoing somewhere far off. And then he says it, the sentence that will rewrite both their lives. Marry me. Maya blinks once, certain she misheard. But he doesn't look like a man who repeats himself. This isn't about love, he continues, voice steady, controlled, like he's outlining terms in a boardroom. It's a contract. A solution. The word contract lands harder than the proposal itself. Maya's fingers tighten around her bag. Why me? She asks, her voice low but unshaken. Ethan doesn't hesitate. Because you have nothing tying you down. And I need something you can provide. There it is. The truth, stripped clean of pretense. Not romance. Not chance. A transaction. Maya studies him now, really studies him, seeing past the wealth, past the control, to something colder underneath. Something guarded. And what exactly do you think I am? She asks. Ethan meets her gaze without flinching. An answer. The rain falls harder between them, the silence stretching, thick with everything unsaid. Pride. Survival. Power. For a moment, Maya feels the weight of it pressing against her chest. The offer. The insult. The possibility. Because she knows what he's really asking. Not just for her name. Not just for her presence. But for control. And yet, beneath it all, something doesn't add up. Something in the way he said it. Too precise. Too calculated. Like he's solving a problem no one else can see. Maya exhales slowly, steadying herself again, the same way she did at the door. Only this time, the world isn't pushing her away. It's pulling her in. You don't even know me, she says. Ethan's response is immediate. I don't need to. And somehow, that's the most dangerous thing he could have said. Because standing there in the rain, between the life she's trying to hold together and the one he's offering like a deal on paper, Maya realizes something she wasn't expecting. This isn't just an opportunity. It's a risk. A gamble. A line she may not be able to come back from. And as she looks at him, really looks at him, she feels it. The shift. The moment everything begins. Because what Ethan Carter hasn't said yet, what he's carefully hidden behind control and contracts and perfectly measured words, is the truth that will change everything. He doesn't just want a wife. He needs something far more complicated than that. And Maya Johnson is about to find out why. The rain does not stop when Maya finally turns away from him. But the sound of his words follows her, steady and impossible to ignore. Marry me. Not as a question, but as a condition, and every step she takes down the slick New York sidewalk feels heavier than the last, because now she is not just walking away from a building that rejected her. She is walking away from a choice that could change everything or cost her everything. She keeps going for half a block before she stops under a flickering streetlight, the kind that hums faintly like it is deciding whether to stay alive or give up, and she exhales slowly, pressing her fingers against her temple as if she can physically push the moment out of her mind. But it does not leave. It lingers, sharp and clear, because men like Ethan Carter do not make offers like that without meaning every word, and men like him do not chase. Which means if he followed her into the rain, there is a reason, a calculated reason, not emotion, never emotion. She turns slightly, not fully, just enough to see him still standing there, composed even in the storm, as if the weather adjusts to him instead of the other way around, his coat darkened by rain, his posture unchanged, waiting, not desperate, not impatient, just certain that eventually she will answer. And that certainty unsettles her more than anything he has said so far. Maya crosses her arms tightly, more to steady herself than to keep warm, and speaks without stepping closer. What kind of man asks a stranger to marry him like it is a business deal? Her voice is calm, but there is an edge beneath it, something protective, something that has been built over years of surviving things no one else saw. Ethan does not flinch, he does not smile either, because this is not a moment for charm. This is negotiation, the kind he understands best, the kind where emotions complicate outcomes. I am not asking for anything complicated, he says, his tone even. I am offering structure, stability, and a clear agreement. Maya lets out a quiet breath that almost turns into a laugh, but she catches it before it becomes anything soft. You think I am that easy to solve? He studies her again. But this time there is something slightly different in his gaze, not softness, not yet, but attention, real attention, not the kind people give when they are pretending to care, the kind that measures, that considers, that recalculates. I think you are in a position where options matter, he replies, carefully, not insulting, not apologizing, just stating something he believes to be true, and that lands harder than anything else, because he is not wrong. Maya looks away for a second, the city moving around them in blurred lights and passing cars, and for a brief moment she sees the reality she has been trying to hold together. Overdue notices sitting on a kitchen counter, a landlord who has stopped asking nicely, a future that feels like it is shrinking day by day no matter how hard she works, no matter how many hours she pushes herself, and beneath all of that, something deeper, something she does not say out loud, something she refuses to let anyone use against her. She looks back at him. Eyes sharper now. What exactly do you want from me? And this time Ethan does not answer immediately. Because this is the part that matters, the part that has to be precise, the part that cannot sound like ownership or control even though at its core it is built on both. He takes one step closer, not enough to invade her space, just enough to lower his voice so it does not have to compete with the rain. I need an air, the word lands between them. Heavy, unexpected. Maya's expression does not change right away, but something in her eyes tightens, something guarded rising instantly to the surface. And just like that, the air shifts again, because this is no longer just about a contract. It is about something deeply personal, something that cannot be reduced to paperwork and signatures no matter how much he tries to frame it that way, and she understands that immediately. You think you can just choose someone and decide that for them? She asks quietly, not angry, not loud, but firm, grounded, the kind of voice that does not bend easily. Ethan holds her gaze, and for the first time there is the smallest crack in his certainty, not doubt, but something close to it, something he does not fully recognize yet. I think I can create an agreement where both of us benefit, he says, and even he can hear how controlled that sounds, how distant, how incomplete. Maya shakes her head slightly, stepping back half a step, not retreating, but creating space, because this is no longer a conversation she can stand too close to. You are talking about a person like it is a project, and there it is, the line he has crossed without realizing it, the place where logic does not protect him anymore. Ethan's jaw tightens slightly, not in anger, but in adjustment, recalibrating, because she is not responding the way most people would. She is not impressed, not intimidated, not eager. She is challenging him, and that is something he has not faced in a long time. This would be your choice, he says, slower now, more deliberate. Nothing would happen without your consent. Maya studies him again, searching for something beyond the words, something real, something human, and for a moment she almost sees it, almost a flicker of something beneath the control, but it disappears just as quickly as it came, hidden again behind structure and precision. And that makes her hesitate, because men like him do not hide things unless there is something worth hiding. The rain begins to lighten slightly, the storm easing just enough for the city sounds to return, and Maya exhales, long and slow, because she knows this moment is not going to disappear. She can walk away, she should walk away, but the truth is already there, pressing quietly against her thoughts. What if this is the only chance she gets to change the direction her life is heading? What if this is the risk that could either break her or finally give her something she has been fighting for alone for too long? She looks at him one more time, really looks this time, past the wealth, past the control, to the man standing in the rain offering something that does not make sense but somehow feels real in a way she cannot explain. And that is what makes it dangerous, because for the first time she realizes this is not just about what he wants, it is about what he is not saying, and whatever that is, it might matter more than the contract itself. The silence stretches longer this time, heavier, as if the city itself is waiting to see what she will do next, and Maya can feel it pressing against her chest. That quiet pressure that comes when a decision is no longer theoretical but immediate, real, unavoidable. She looks down at her hands for a moment, fingers still damp from the rain, the cold now settled deep into her skin. But it is not the weather that makes her hesitate. It is the weight of what he is offering, not just money, not just stability, but a life that would no longer belong entirely to her. And she has spent too long fighting to hold on to the pieces of herself that no one else valued to give them up easily now. You are asking for more than you are saying, she finally says, her voice steady but quieter, as if speaking too loudly might make the moment fracture. Ethan does not deny it, because he cannot, and because part of him knows she would see through any attempt to soften it. I am asking for clarity, he replies, but even as he says it, he knows that is not enough. Not for her, not for what this actually is. Maya lifts her gaze again, searching his face, not for charm or persuasion, but for honesty, the kind that does not hide behind polished language. What happens after, she asks, and this question lands differently, because it is not about the contract itself, it is about what comes when the contract ends. What remains when the structure he is offering dissolves? Ethan pauses, and this is the first time he does not have an immediate answer, because he has not allowed himself to think that far. His life has always been about control, about outcomes, about ensuring that nothing unpredictable has the space to exist. But this This is unpredictable entirely, and he feels it now in a way that unsettles him more than he expected. After, he repeats, as if testing the word, and for a moment the rain, the city, everything fades into the background, leaving only the question between them. Maya watches him carefully, because this is the moment that matters, not the offer, not the money, but the truth he does not yet know how to articulate. And when he does not answer right away, she nods slightly, almost to herself. That tells me everything I need to know, she says, and there is no accusation in her tone, just quiet understanding. She shifts her weight, preparing to walk away again. Because uncertainty is not something she can afford, not when the stakes are this high. But before she can move, Ethan speaks again, his voice lower now, less controlled, not by much, but enough for her to notice. It would not be temporary, he says, and the words seem to surprise even him as they leave his mouth. Maya stops, her body still, her expression unreadable. What does that mean? She asks. And now he has to choose whether to retreat back into safety or step into something far less certain. It means I am not looking for an exit, he says slowly, each word deliberate, as if building something he has never had to build before. It means this would be permanent. The word permanent hangs in the air, heavier than anything else. He has said, because now this is no longer just a transaction. It is a commitment, and commitment is something neither of them trusts easily. Maya studies him again, more carefully this time, because this changes things, not enough to make the decision simple, but enough to make it real in a different way. You are offering permanence to someone you just met, she says, and there is a quiet disbelief there, not mocking, just honest. Ethan meets her gaze, and for the first time there is no calculation in his expression, only certainty. I am offering it because I know what I need, he replies, and there is something almost vulnerable in that statement, something that does not fit neatly into the world he is used to operating in. Maya feels that shift, small but undeniable, and it unsettles her in a way she cannot quite explain, because it would be easier if he were just cold, just transactional. Just another man trying to control something he does not understand. But this is different. This is someone who believes in what he is saying, even if he does not fully understand why. And that makes it harder to dismiss, harder to walk away from. She takes a slow breath, the kind that steadies her when everything feels uncertain, and then she asks the question she has been holding back, the one that matters more than anything else. Why me? Not in the sense of convenience, not in the sense of availability, but in the deeper sense, the one that requires an answer he cannot reduce to logic. Ethan does not look away this time, because he knows there is no safe answer, no answer that will make this easier. But he gives her the truth anyway, because you did not break when they tried to make you feel small, he says, and the simplicity of it catches her off guard, because it is not about what she lacks, it is about what she carries, something steady, something unshaken. Something he recognizes even if he cannot fully explain it. Maya blinks once, processing the words. And for a moment the city fades again, leaving only that sentence between them, because you did not break. And suddenly this is not just about survival or opportunity. It is about being seen in a way she has not been seen before, not as a problem to fix, not as a situation to solve, but as a person who stood in the rain and did not disappear. And that realization shifts something inside her. Not enough to make the decision easy, but enough to make it impossible to ignore. She looks down briefly, then back up at him, her expression still guarded, but no longer closed. If I say yes, she begins slowly, choosing each word carefully. This is not your project. This is not your solution. This is my life. Ethan nods once, immediate, firm, understood, he says, and there is no hesitation in that response. Because for the first time he is not trying to control the outcome. He is accepting the terms, and that changes everything. The rain finally begins to ease, the storm breaking just enough for the city lights to sharpen around them. And Maya feels the weight of the moment settle fully into place, because now the decision is hers, completely. And whatever she chooses will not just alter her path, it will define it. She exhales one last time, steady, controlled, and in that breath, something shifts. Something quiet but irreversible, because she is no longer standing outside looking in. She is standing at the edge of something entirely new, and whether it becomes a mistake or a turning point depends on what she says next. Say it, he tells her quietly, not as a command, but as an opening. And for a moment Maya just looks at him, the city finally calming around them as the rain fades into a light mist, her breath steady, her mind moving faster than anything she is showing on the outside. Because this is not a simple yes or no. This is a decision that will ripple through every part of her life, and she knows it, she feels it. But she also knows something else now, something she did not expect when she stepped into that night. He sees her, not completely, not perfectly, but enough to make her pause instead of walk away. And that is dangerous, because being seen means being vulnerable, and vulnerability has always cost her more than she could afford. She straightened slightly, her voice calm but firm. If I say yes, we do this my way too, not just yours. Ethan does not hesitate, his response immediate, as if he has already accepted that this will not be a one-sided arrangement. Then tell me your terms, and that shifts the balance, not dramatically, but enough for Maya to feel that she is not stepping into something where she disappears. She takes a small step closer, not enough to close the distance, but enough to make the conversation real, not just words thrown across space. First, she says, there is no ownership. You do not control where I go, who I talk to, or how I live my life. Ethan nods once. No ownership, he repeats, not as a concession, but as a confirmation. Second, she continues, if this is permanent like you said, then it is not just about what you need. It is about respect, not behind closed doors, not just when it is convenient. All the time. There is a slight pause after that, because respect is not something he has had to define in personal terms for a long time. In business it is clear, structured, measurable. But this is different. This is not something he can quantify, and yet he understands exactly what she means. You will have it, he says, and there is no hesitation, no condition attached, just a statement, and that matters more than anything else he could have added. Maya watches him carefully, looking for cracks, for signs that this is still just a controlled negotiation. But what she sees instead is something steadier, something that feels less like manipulation and more like intention. And that unsettles her again, because it would be easier if he were predictable, easier if she could categorize him as just another powerful man trying to get what he wants. But he is not fitting into that shape, not completely, and that makes the decision harder, not easier. She exhales slowly, and then she says the last part, the one that matters most. If I walk into this, I do not walk in as someone you saved, I walk in as someone who chose this. Ethan's expression shifts slightly, not dramatically, but enough for her to see it, because that sentence lands differently than the others. It removes the idea of rescue, of imbalance, of him being the solution to her life, and replaces it with something equal, something he has not built this arrangement around. And yet, instead of resisting it, he accepts it. You choose this, he says, and there is something quieter in his voice now, something that was not there before, something less controlled. And that is when Maya realizes the power in this moment is not one-sided anymore, not entirely. She nods once, then the decision settles, not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly, like something clicking into place inside her. Okay, she says, and the word is simple, almost too simple for what it carries, but it changes everything, because with that one word, the line she was standing on disappears, and there is no going back to the version of her life that existed before this moment. Ethan does not smile, he does not celebrate, he simply nods once, as if acknowledging the weight of what just happened. Then we begin, he says, and the way he says it makes it clear this is not a beginning he takes lightly. A black car pulls up to the curb, almost as if it has been waiting for this exact moment. The door opening smoothly, quietly, the interior warm and lit with a soft glow that contrasts sharply with the damp cold of the street. Maya hesitates for just a second, her hand tightening around her bag, because stepping into that car is not just transportation, it is transition, it is crossing from one world into another, and she knows that once she sits down inside, everything shifts permanently. She looks back once, not at him, but at the street behind her, the life she has been holding together piece by piece, the version of herself that fought quietly to survive, and for a moment she feels it, the pull to stay, the instinct to protect what she knows. But then she turns forward again, because something else is pulling her now, something uncertain, something risky, but also something that feels like possibility. She steps into the car, the door closing softly behind her, sealing the moment. Ethan slides in on the other side. The space between them filled with silence, not awkward, not empty, but full of everything that has not been said. Yet, the car begins to move, smooth and steady, the city lights passing by in blurred streaks through the window, and Maya sits there, hands resting in her lap, posture straight, composed, but inside, everything is shifting, because she knows this is not just a deal anymore. It cannot be, not after the way he looked at her, not after the way he accepted her terms without trying to reshape them, not after the way he stepped into the rain for her, when he could have stayed inside and forgotten she existed. And across from her, Ethan sits just as still, just as composed, but his mind is not where it usually is, not calculating, not projecting outcomes, but replaying something far simpler and far more complicated at the same time. The moment she said yes, the way it felt different than any agreement he has ever made, because this one was not secured with leverage or pressure, it was given freely, chosen, and that makes it something he cannot fully control. And as the car disappears into the city, carrying them both into a future neither of them has truly defined yet, one truth settles quietly between them. This arrangement was supposed to solve a problem, but it has already begun to create something neither of them expected. The car slows as it turns through a set of iron gates that open without a sound, revealing a long driveway lined with soft ground lights that stretch toward a house that does not look like a house at all, but something closer to a private estate. Glass and stone rising in clean lines, every window glowing with controlled warmth. And Maya feels it immediately, that shift in scale, in atmosphere, in expectation, because this is not just where Ethan lives. This is the world he exists in, a world built on precision, privacy, and quiet power. The car comes to a smooth stop under a covered entrance, and for a second neither of them moves. The silence inside the vehicle thick with everything that has changed in the last hour. Maya glances out the window, taking in the size of it, the stillness, the absence of noise that usually fills a place this large. No shouting, no distant televisions, no neighbors close enough to hear anything at all, just quiet, controlled, intentional, and it feels unfamiliar in a way she cannot quite name. The driver steps out and opens her door. And as she places her feet onto the dry stone beneath the covered entry, she realizes something simple but undeniable. There is no going back to the version of her life that existed before this moment. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever in the same way. She straightens slightly, adjusting her coat, holding on to that last piece of familiarity as she steps forward. Ethan moves beside her, his presence steady, not guiding, not leading, but undeniably shaping the space around them. Inside, the air is warm, softly lit, the scent faint and clean, like nothing is ever out of place here. A woman in a tailored black suit approaches quietly, her posture professional, her expression neutral but attentive. "Mr. Carter, everything is prepared," she says, her voice smooth, practiced. Then her eyes shift briefly to Maya, not dismissive, not openly judgmental, but assessing, measuring, the way people do when they are trying to understand where someone fits. Ethan nods once. "This is Maya Johnson," he says, and there is no hesitation, no explanation attached, just a statement of fact. "She will be staying here." The woman inclines her head slightly. "Understood, Miss Johnson, if you will follow me." Maya hesitates for a fraction of a second, not because she is unsure of where she is going, but because she feels it again, that invisible shift in how she is being placed, categorized, absorbed into a system that has already been built without her. But she lifts her chin slightly and steps forward anyway, because she did not come here to shrink, she came here to choose. The hallway they walk through is wide, the floors smooth beneath her steps, every detail intentional, every surface reflecting a kind of quiet perfection that feels almost unreal. And as they move deeper into the house, Maya notices something else. There are no personal traces, no clutter, no signs of life beyond structure and design. It is beautiful, but it is also empty in a way that makes her chest tighten slightly. "This way," the woman says, opening a door at the end of the hall. Inside, the room is large but not overwhelming. Soft lighting, neutral tones, a bed that looks untouched, a space prepared but not lived in. And Maya steps inside slowly, taking it in. "This is yours," the woman adds, "if you need anything, It will be arranged, and with that, she steps back, leaving Maya alone in the room, the door closing quietly behind her, and for the first time since she said yes, the silence settles fully. No rain, no city noise, no conversation to hold on to. Just her and the reality of where she is. Maya sets her bag down slowly, her fingers lingering on it for a second longer than necessary, as if it anchors her to something familiar, something real. She walks further into the room, her steps measured, controlled, but inside, everything is shifting again, because this place, this life, it does not feel like something she belongs to, not yet, maybe not ever. But she also knows something else. She did not come here to belong to the space. She came here to define her place within it. There is a soft knock at the door, and when it opens, Ethan steps inside, his presence immediately altering the atmosphere. Not heavy, not overwhelming, but undeniable. He stops a few feet away, giving her space, as if he understands that this moment is not about him. How is it? He asks, and the question is simple, but it carries something more beneath it, something that sounds less like evaluation and more like curiosity. Maya looks around once more before answering. It is quiet, she says, and there is a meaning in that word that goes beyond sound. Ethan nods slightly, as if he understands exactly what she is pointing to. It is meant to be, he replies, because in his world, quiet means control. It means nothing is unpredictable, nothing is out of place. But Maya looks at him again, her expression thoughtful, not critical, just honest. It feels empty, she says, and the word lands differently, softer, but more direct, and for a moment, Ethan does not respond, not because he disagrees, but because he has never had to name it before, never had to see it from the outside. The silence stretches between them again, but this time it is different, not uncertain, not tense, but revealing, because for the first time, something about his world has been reflected back to him in a way he cannot ignore. It will not stay that way, he says finally, and there is something in his voice that shifts, something quieter, less controlled. And Maya notices it immediately, not the words, but the tone, because it is not a promise built on power. It is something closer to intention, and that makes her pause, makes her consider something she had not fully allowed herself to think about yet, that this place, this arrangement, this life, it is not fixed. It is not something she has to simply fit into. It is something that might change, slowly, quietly, over time. She nods once, not agreeing, not disagreeing, just acknowledging. Then we will see, she says, and there is a quiet strength in that sentence, because it is not a surrender, it is a statement, a reminder that she is here by choice, not by force. Ethan studies her for a moment longer, then inclines his head slightly, as if accepting that boundary without question. Get some rest, he says, and then he turns, leaving the room as quietly as he entered, the door closing behind him once again, and Maya is alone, standing in a space that is too perfect, too still, too far removed from everything she has known. She walks to the window slowly, looking out at the grounds beyond, the lights soft against the night, the world outside distant and unreachable from here. And for a moment, she feels it, the weight of the decision settling fully into her chest, not as regret, not as fear, but as something more complex, something that does not have a name yet, because this is not just a new place, it is a new reality. And as she stands there, watching the quiet stretch out in front of her, one thought settles clearly in her mind. She did not step into this house to be changed by it. She stepped into it to change what it means, even if she does not yet know how. Morning arrives without noise, without the usual rhythm of traffic or distant voices, and for a moment Maya forgets where she is, her eyes opening slowly to a ceiling too high, too smooth, the light filtering in through wide glass windows that stretch across the far wall, soft and controlled. Like even the sun has been carefully managed here. She sits up slowly, the sheets untouched, perfectly arranged as if they expected her to move a certain way. And that realization lingers, because everything in this place seems to anticipate behavior, to shape it before it even happens. She swings her feet to the floor, the surface cool beneath her skin, and for a second she just sits there, grounding herself, reminding herself that this is still her life, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if it looks like something out of someone else's story. She stands, walks to the window, and looks out over the property, the city barely visible in the distance, reduced to a faint line of movement far beyond the gates, and she realizes something quietly unsettling. This place is designed to keep the outside world out, not just physically, but emotionally, as if nothing unpredictable is allowed to reach inside. There is a soft chime from somewhere near the door, and when she turns, she notices a small panel lit gently on the wall, displaying a simple message. Breakfast is ready. The phrasing feels impersonal, efficient, like a system rather than a person, and Maya exhales slowly before moving. She does not rush. She does not adjust herself to match the space. She moves at her own pace, because that is something she refuses to lose. The hallway is just as quiet as it was the night before, every step echoing slightly. Not because of emptiness, but because of space, too much of it, and as she follows the direction she was given, she becomes aware of something else. Eyes, not directly, not openly, but subtly, staff moving through the house with precision, their presence controlled, their expressions neutral, but there is curiosity beneath it, quiet and careful, the kind that does not ask questions out loud but forms them anyway. She reaches the dining area, a wide room with floor-to-ceiling windows, a table set with exact symmetry, everything placed with intention, and at the far end, Ethan is already seated, a tablet in front of him, his posture composed, his focus sharp, as if the world outside this house does not pause just because something inside it has changed. He looks up when she enters, and for a brief second, something shifts in his expression, not surprise, not exactly, but awareness, as if seeing her there makes the situation more real, more immediate. "Good morning," he says, his tone calm, steady. Maya nods slightly. "Good morning," she replies, her voice just as composed. She takes a seat across from him, not waiting for instruction, not asking for permission, and that small choice does not go unnoticed. A staff member steps forward, placing a plate in front of her, the food arranged carefully, almost too perfectly, and Maya glances at it briefly before looking back up. "You have people who think for you here," she says, not as criticism, but as observation. Ethan sets his tablet aside, folding his hands lightly. "I have people who manage details," he corrects, and there is a subtle difference in that statement, one that speaks to control rather than dependence. Maya tilts her head slightly, considering that, and then she nods once, as if accepting the distinction without fully agreeing with it. The silence that follows is not uncomfortable, but it is deliberate, both of them aware that this is not just a shared meal. It is the beginning of something structured, something that will require definition, boundaries, clarity. Ethan reaches for a document resting beside him, sliding it across the table toward her. "The contract," he says simply. Maya looks at it, the clean lines of the paper, the weight of what it represents, and for a moment she does not touch it, not because she is unsure, but because she understands that once she does, this becomes official in a way that cannot be undone easily. She finally reaches forward, pulling it closer, her eyes scanning the text, the language precise, controlled, every clause written to eliminate uncertainty, to define expectations, to remove ambiguity, and she notices something immediately. Her terms are there, not altered, not softened, exactly as she stated them. She looks up at him, and there is a quiet acknowledgement in her expression. "You listened," she says. Ethan meets her gaze. "I said I would." And again, there is no hesitation, no need to prove it further, because the document speaks for itself. Maya continues reading, her attention sharp, and then she stops at one section, her brow tightening slightly. "This part," she says, tapping the page lightly. "What does this mean?" Ethan glances at it briefly, then back at her. "It ensures privacy," he explains. "It prevents external interference, media, business entities, anyone who might attempt to disrupt the arrangement." Maya's eyes narrow slightly. "And me?" she asks. "What if I want to leave?" The question is direct, unfiltered, and it lands differently than anything else she has asked so far, because it is not about control or respect. It is about freedom. Ethan does not answer immediately, not because he is avoiding it, but because this is the first time the possibility has been placed clearly in front of him, the idea that this could end, that she could choose to walk away. And for a moment, something unfamiliar moves through him, not fear, but something close to it, You can leave, he says finally. And the words are simple, but they carry weight, because they are not written in the contract. They are spoken, chosen. Maya studies him carefully, measuring the truth in that statement. And after a moment, she nods slightly. Then it stays, she says, and with that, she reaches for the pen placed neatly beside the document. Her fingers steady, her expression calm. She signs her name, not quickly, not hesitantly, but with intention, each letter clear, deliberate. And as the ink settles onto the page, something shifts again, something quiet but irreversible, because now this is not just an agreement. It is a reality. She slides the document back toward him, and Ethan looks at it for a second before signing his own name. The motion just as precise, just as controlled, and when he sets the pen down, the room feels different, not dramatically, not visibly, but undeniably, because something has been sealed between them, not just on paper, but in choice. Maya leans back slightly in her chair, exhaling softly, and for the first time since she walked into this house, she allows herself to feel it. Not fear, not regret, but awareness, the full weight of what she has stepped into. And across from her, Ethan watches her, not as a businessman evaluating a deal, but as someone realizing that this arrangement, this carefully constructed solution, has already begun to move beyond his control, because the moment she signed that paper, she did not just enter his world, she changed it. The pen is still in her hand when the weight of what she has done finally settles in, not as a sudden shock, but as a quiet realization that spreads slowly through her chest, steady and undeniable. Maya places the pen down with care, her fingers lingering for just a second before she pulls her hand back, as if acknowledging that something irreversible has just happened. Across from her, Ethan folds the contract neatly, precise as always, but there is a subtle pause in his movement, a fraction of a second where his focus is not on the paper, but on her, because the dynamic between them has shifted again, not just signed, but defined, and neither of them can pretend this is theoretical anymore. The staff clears the table silently, moving with the same controlled efficiency as before, but Maya notices something different now. The way their glances linger a fraction longer, the way their posture adjusts slightly when they pass her, not openly disrespectful, not overtly questioning, but aware that something has changed in the structure of this house, and they are still trying to understand what it means. Ethan stands first, his movement smooth, deliberate, and when he speaks again, his tone carries a new layer of clarity. There is an event tonight, he says, a public one. Maya looks up at him, her expression calm but attentive. What kind of event? She asks. Ethan adjusts the cuff of his sleeve slightly. A small, controlled motion. A fundraising gala. He replies, important people will be there, business partners, media. The phrasing is intentional, not overwhelming, but clear enough to set the expectation. Maya leans back slightly in her chair, processing that. And then she nods once. You want me there, she says, not as a question, but as confirmation. Ethan meets her gaze. I need you there, he corrects, and that distinction matters, because this is not about preference. It is about necessity, about the role she has just agreed to step into. Maya studies him for a moment, then she asks the question that comes naturally. What am I to them? The room seems to quiet further at that, as if even the air is waiting for his answer. Ethan does not hesitate this time. My wife, he says, and the word lands with a weight that neither of them reacts to immediately, because it is not just a title, it is a declaration, one that will be seen, judged, questioned. Maya exhales slowly, her gaze steady. Then they will believe that, she says, and there is no uncertainty in her tone, only resolve. Ethan nods once, acknowledging the statement without adding to it, as if understanding that she does not need reassurance, she needs clarity. Preparations will be made. He continues, someone will assist you. Maya's lips press together slightly, and she tilts her head just enough to show that she hears the implication. Assist, she repeats softly. Then she gives a small nod. I will decide what that means, and again, that quiet assertion of control, of independence, shifts something in the space between them. Ethan does not challenge it. He simply accepts it, as he has been learning to do. The rest of the day moves with a kind of structured rhythm, but for Maya, it does not feel like she is being carried through it. It feels like she is stepping into it, observing, choosing, defining her place piece by piece. A stylist arrives in the afternoon, polite, professional, but with a careful distance, as if unsure how to address her, as if waiting for a signal of status, of hierarchy, and Maya notices it immediately, not with offense, but with clarity, because she has seen this before in different forms, the hesitation, the quiet judgment masked as professionalism. She does not react to it directly. She does not need to. Instead, she moves with calm certainty, selecting what feels right, not what is expected, not what fits the image they might be trying to create for her. And that decision, simple as it is, begins to reshape the way the people around her respond. Because confidence does not ask for permission, it defines space on its own. By the time evening settles in, the house shifts again, lights adjusting, staff moving with slightly increased urgency, the quiet preparation of something larger about to unfold. Maya stands in front of the mirror, not studying herself, but recognizing the version of herself reflected back, composed, steady, not transformed, but elevated in a way that still feels authentic. And for a moment, she remembers the woman, standing outside in the rain, turned away, dismissed, and the contrast is sharp, but not because she has changed, because the world around her has shifted enough to see her differently. There is a soft knock at the door, and when she opens it, Ethan stands there, already prepared, his presence as controlled as ever, but his eyes pause on her for a fraction longer than necessary, not evaluating, not measuring, just seeing. "You are ready," he says, and there is something quieter in his voice now, something less distant. Maya nods once. "I was ready before I got here," she replies, and the statement is simple, but it lands with quiet strength, because it is not about the dress, or the setting, or the role she is about to play. It is about who she has always been. Ethan inclines his head slightly, as if acknowledging that truth without needing to comment on it. "Then we should go," he says. The car is already waiting, and as they walk side by side through the house, the space feels different again, not empty, not controlled, but shifting, as if something new has begun to take shape within it. The doors open, the night air cool but calm, the city lights stretching out ahead of them, and Maya steps forward without hesitation this time. Because she understands now, this is not just about entering his world. It is about standing in it without losing herself. And as the car door closes behind them, carrying them toward a room full of eyes, expectations, and unspoken judgments, one truth settles clearly in her mind. Tonight will not just define how they are seen, it will define how she chooses to be seen, and she is not stepping into that room to be accepted, she is stepping into it to be undeniable. The car slows as it approaches the entrance of the gala, a line of flashing cameras already visible through the tinted glass, bursts of light cutting through the night like sharp interruptions, and Maya feels it before she even steps out. The shift in energy, the weight of attention waiting just beyond the door. The driver opens it smoothly, and the noise rises instantly, voices layered over one another, footsteps, the low hum of expectation that always surrounds rooms filled with power and money. Ethan steps out first, composed as ever, unaffected by the attention, as if it belongs to him the way air belongs to the world. Then he turns slightly, extending his hand, not as a command, not as a performance, but as a quiet invitation, and Maya looks at it for a fraction of a second before placing her hand in his, not hesitantly, not cautiously, but with intention, because this moment is not about following him, it is about stepping forward beside him. And as she rises from the car, the lights hit her instantly, flashes reflecting off glass, off polished metal, off everything that makes this world feel distant and untouchable, except now she is standing in it, fully visible, fully present, and for a brief second, the noise dips, just enough for the shift to register, because people are not just seeing Ethan Carter, they are seeing who stands next to him. Whispers begin almost immediately, subtle but sharp, carried in glances, in raised brows, in the slight pause of conversations that resume too quickly, and Maya hears it without needing to catch every word. She has lived long enough to recognize the language of judgment even when it is not spoken directly. Ethan's grip on her hand remains steady, not tightening, not guiding, just there. And that steadiness anchors something inside her as they walk forward, each step deliberate. The Entrance opening into a room filled with light and movement. Chandeliers casting warm reflections across polished floors. People dressed in precision. Every detail curated. Every interaction calculated. And yet, beneath all of that, something else moves quietly. Curiosity, skepticism, the need to understand where she fits into a world that has not made space for her before. A man approaches them first. Older, confident, his smile practiced but sharp at the edges. "Ethan," he says, extending his hand. "I was not aware you would be bringing company tonight." The word company lingers just slightly too long, and Maya notices it immediately. The way it reduces, the way it categorizes without asking. Ethan does not hesitate. "This is my wife, Maya," he says, his voice even, controlled, but firm enough that the word wife lands clearly, unmistakably. The man's expression shifts, just for a second, not enough to be called surprise, but enough to reveal that this was not expected. Maya meets his gaze directly, offering a small, composed smile, not overly warm, not distant, just present. "It is a pleasure," she says, and her tone is calm, steady, leaving no space for dismissal. The man nods, adjusting quickly. "Of course," he replies, though the curiosity in his eyes does not disappear. As they move further into the room, the pattern repeats. Introductions, glances, subtle shifts in tone, some polite, some measured, some carrying the quiet weight of unspoken assumptions. And through it all, Maya remains steady, not reacting to every look, not shrinking under the attention, but not ignoring it either. She absorbs it, understands it, and chooses how to respond to it. And that choice begins to change the dynamic in ways that are not immediately visible, but deeply felt. At one point, a woman approaches, her smile bright, but her eyes calculating. "You must have quite the story," she says lightly, as if making conversation, but the implication is clear. Maya tilts her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. "Everyone does," she replies, and the simplicity of that answer shifts the tone instantly, because it does not explain, it does not justify, it does not give anything away, it simply exists, and the woman pauses, just for a moment, before nodding and moving on. Ethan watches these interactions quietly, not intervening, not directing, but observing. And what he sees is not what he expected. He thought he would need to guide, to protect, to manage the perception of her presence. But Maya does not require that. She does not need to be shaped to fit this world. She is shaping how this world responds to her instead, and that realization settles into him slowly, changing something fundamental in the way he sees this arrangement. The evening progresses, conversations blending into one another, the room alive with movement and subtle power plays. And then, as if inevitable, the moment comes, a voice, slightly louder than the others, not aggressive, but careless in its assumption. "I did not realize this was that kind of arrangement." The words are not directed at Maya, but they are close enough, clear enough, and the room shifts again, quieter, not silent, but attentive, waiting to see how this will unfold. Maya hears it, of course she does, and for a fraction of a second, there is stillness, not hesitation, but decision. She turns slowly, her gaze steady as she finds the source, a man with a half smile, confident in the kind of comment that usually passes without consequence. And she holds his gaze, not confrontational, not defensive, just present. Then she speaks, her voice calm, but carrying clearly through the space between them. "The only arrangement here is respect," she says, and the simplicity of it lands harder than anything louder or sharper could have, because it does not escalate. It defines. The man's expression shifts, the confidence faltering just slightly, and the room breathes again, the tension dissolving into something quieter, something more aware. Ethan's hand remains at her side, not pulling her away, not stepping in, because he does not need to. She has already handled it. And as the evening continues, something subtle but undeniable changes in the way people look at her. Not fully, not completely, but enough to shift from questioning to consideration, from assumption to awareness. And as Maya stands there, moving through a world that was not built for her, but is beginning to adjust to her presence, one truth settles clearly in Ethan's mind. This was supposed to be a controlled solution, a structured arrangement, but standing beside her now, watching the way she holds her ground without force, without fear, He realizes something he did not plan for. He did not bring her into his world to complete it. She is already changing it. The laughter returns, softer now, more measured, as if the room itself is recalibrating after the moment Maya just shifted without raising her voice. Conversations resume, but they do not flow the same way. There is a new awareness in the air, a subtle recognition that she is not someone who can be quietly categorized and dismissed, and Ethan feels it as clearly as she does, not just in the way people look at her, but in the way they now look at him, because standing beside her has altered the narrative they thought they understood. The evening continues, but something beneath it has changed direction. Maya steps slightly away from Ethan for a moment, not to distance herself, but to breathe, to observe, to center herself within a space that is still adjusting to her presence. She moves toward a quieter corner of the room, near a set of tall windows where the city lights stretch endlessly below, and for a second, she allows herself to feel it, the contrast, the distance between where she was just days ago and where she stands now, not as a fantasy, not as a dream, but as a reality she actively chose. And that distinction matters more than anything else. A voice breaks into her thoughts, smooth but deliberate. You handled that well. Maya turns slightly to see a woman standing beside her, older, composed, her presence carrying the kind of authority that does not need to be announced. Thank you, Maya replies, her tone calm, measured. The woman studies her for a moment, not with judgment, but with interest. Most people in this room would have ignored it, she says, or laughed along. Maya's expression remains steady. I am not most people, she replies, and the woman's lips curve into the faintest hint of a smile. No, you are not, she agrees. There is a pause. Then the woman adds, they will test you. You know that. Maya nods slightly. I expect that, she says, and there is no hesitation in her voice, only understanding. The woman considers her for another moment before speaking again. Then do not let them decide who you are. The advice is simple, but it carries weight. The kind that comes from experience rather than opinion. Maya inclines her head slightly, acknowledging it, before the woman moves on, disappearing back into the flow of the room as seamlessly as she appeared. Maya watches her go for a second, then turns her gaze back to the city. But this time, her thoughts are interrupted by something closer, a presence she recognizes immediately. Ethan steps beside her, his posture relaxed but attentive. You did not need me, he says quietly, not as a question, not as a complaint, but as an observation. Maya glances at him briefly, then back at the view. I did not come here to need you, she replies, and the honesty in that statement is not sharp, not defensive. It is simply true. Ethan nods slightly, absorbing that, and for a moment, neither of them speaks, the silence between them no longer uncertain, but reflective, because both of them are beginning to understand that this arrangement is not unfolding the way either of them expected. You changed the room, he says after a moment, and there is something different in his tone now, something that carries recognition rather than control. Maya lets out a soft breath, almost a laugh. I did not change anything, she says. They just had to see it differently. Ethan looks at her then, really looks at her, and there is no calculation in his gaze this time, no analysis, just awareness, and it lingers longer than it should, long enough for Maya to notice, long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. But before it can settle into anything more, the moment shifts again. A man approaches, his expression polite, but his tone carrying an edge that does not bother to hide itself. Ethan, he says, nodding briefly before his eyes flick to Maya. I assume this is the arrangement everyone is whispering about. The word arrangement lands deliberately, heavier than before, as if testing the boundaries Maya has already set. Ethan's posture shifts almost imperceptibly, his presence sharpening, but before he can respond, Maya speaks first, her voice calm, steady. The arrangement is that we are married, she says, and there is no hesitation, no room for interpretation. The man raises an eyebrow slightly, his smile thin. Of course, he replies, though the skepticism in his tone remains. Maya holds his gaze for a moment longer, then adds, anything beyond that is your assumption, and the clarity of that statement lands harder than any confrontation could have, because it leaves no space for argument, only reflection. The man's expression tightens slightly, then he nods, stepping back, adjusting quickly as the room continues to shift around them. Ethan watches the exchange closely, and this time, something inside him moves differently. Not just recognition, not just awareness, but something closer to respect, because she is not just holding her ground, she is redefining it. And that was never part of his plan. The rest of the evening unfolds with fewer interruptions, fewer careless comments, but the undercurrent remains quieter. Now, but still present, because change does not happen instantly. It happens in moments, in shifts, in the way people begin to adjust their behavior without fully understanding why. As the event begins to wind down, the energy softens, conversations become less guarded, more fluid, and Maya feels it. The difference, subtle but real, the way she is no longer being evaluated as an outsider, but acknowledged as something else, something not yet defined, but no longer dismissed. As they prepare to leave, Ethan pauses for a moment, looking at her in a way that feels different from before, not assessing, not calculating, but considering. You knew exactly what to say, he says, and there is something quieter in his voice now, something that carries more than just observation. Maya meets his gaze, her expression calm but thoughtful. I knew what not to accept, she replies, and that distinction settles between them, because it is not about performance, not about strategy, it is about boundaries, about knowing where the line is and refusing to let anyone redraw it. Ethan nods slowly, as if understanding something he has not fully grasped until now. And as they walk back toward the exit, the camera is waiting once again, the lights ready to capture whatever image they present. One truth settles quietly but firmly in his mind. He entered this arrangement believing he was in control of every outcome. But standing beside her now, watching the way she moves through a world that was never built for her and still refuses to bend, he realizes something he did not anticipate. Control is no longer the most powerful thing in this equation. She is. The flash of cameras follows them again as they step out of the gala. But this time, something feels different. Not in the noise, not in the lights, but in the way Maya walks through it, steady, composed, untouched by the attention that once might have made her hesitate. And Ethan notices it immediately. Not just the way others look at her now, but the way she carries herself as if she has already decided she belongs wherever she chooses to stand. The car door closes behind them, sealing out the noise, and for a moment, there is silence, deep and contained, the kind that allows everything unspoken to rise to the surface. Maya exhales slowly, leaning back slightly, her eyes focused ahead, not on him, not on anything specific, just processing, absorbing, and Ethan watches her, not directly, but with quiet awareness, because something about tonight has shifted more than perception. It has shifted understanding. You knew they would question you, he says finally, his voice calm, measured. Maya does not look at him right away. She lets the words settle before answering. People always question what they do not expect, she replies, her tone even. But there is something deeper beneath it, something shaped by experience rather than reaction. Ethan nods slightly, considering that. And then he adds, you did not hesitate. Maya turns her head just enough to meet his gaze, her expression steady. I did, she says. And that answer surprises him, not because of the hesitation, but because she admits it so easily, without weakness, without defensiveness, just truth. I just did not let it show, she continues. And there it is, the difference between reaction and control, between feeling and decision. Ethan leans back slightly, his posture relaxing in a way that is almost imperceptible, but real. And for a moment, he says nothing, because he is realizing something he has not considered before, that strength does not always look like certainty. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to let uncertainty define you. The car moves smoothly through the city, lights passing in quiet streaks outside the window, and Maya watches them without really seeing them, her thoughts moving elsewhere, because tonight was not just about proving something to others. It was about proving something to herself, that she could stand in a space that was never meant for her and not shrink, not adjust, not lose herself. And that realization settles into her with quiet weight. When they arrive back at the house, the gates open just as silently as before, the driveway stretching out ahead, familiar now in a way it was not just hours ago. And as the car comes to a stop, neither of them moves immediately, the moment lingering, as if both of them are aware that something needs to be said, but neither is quite sure how to say it. Ethan steps out first this time, but when Maya follows, he does not walk ahead. He matches her pace, side by side, not leading, not guiding, just present, inside. The house is as still as ever, the quiet wrapping around them like something constant, but tonight, it does not feel as empty as it did before, and Maya notices that, not as a change in the space itself, but as a shift in how she experiences it. As they walk through the hallway, Ethan slows slightly, turning toward her. "There is something you should know," he says, and the tone of his voice is different, less controlled, less structured, as if the words are not part of a plan, but something he has decided to say in the moment. Maya stops, her attention sharpening instantly. "What is it?" she asks, and for a second, Ethan hesitates, not visibly, not dramatically, but enough for her to see that whatever he is about to say is not something he shares easily. "This arrangement," he begins, then pauses, adjusting the phrasing as if trying to find the most accurate way to say something that does not fit into clean terms. "It is not as simple as I made it sound." Maya's expression does not change, but her focus deepens. She already knows that. She felt at the moment he could not answer what happens after, but now he is saying it out loud, and that matters. "What are you not telling me?" she asks, her voice calm but direct. Ethan meets her gaze, and for the first time since she has known him, there is no shield in his expression, no calculated distance, just something quieter, something real. "I cannot have children," he says, and the words land with a weight that shifts the entire foundation of what she thought this arrangement was built on. Maya blinks once, processing, not because she does not understand the words, but because she understands what they mean, what they change, what they reveal, and for a moment, neither of them speaks, the silence stretching, not empty, but full of everything that has just been uncovered. "You said you needed an heir," she says finally, and her voice is softer now, not less steady, but more aware. Ethan nods slightly. "I do," he replies, and there is no contradiction in his tone, only complexity, because this is not a lie. It is a truth that exists alongside another. Maya studies him, her thoughts moving quickly now, connecting the pieces, the control, the precision, the need for structure, and now this. The missing part that changes everything. "This was never about choosing someone convenient," she says slowly. "It was about finding someone you believe could carry something you cannot." Ethan does not respond immediately, but his silence confirms it more clearly than words could, and that realization shifts something inside Maya. Not her decision, not her presence here, but her understanding of it, because this is no longer just a transaction built on power. It is something else, something rooted in vulnerability he did not show until now, and that changes the balance in a way neither of them can ignore. "You should have told me," she says, not accusing, not angry, just stating a fact. Ethan nods once. "I should have." He agrees, and there is no defense in his voice, no attempt to justify the omission, only acknowledgement, and that matters more than any explanation could. The silence that follows is different now, not uncertain, not tense, but reflective, because something real has been placed between them, something that cannot be undone. And as Maya stands there, looking at him not as a billionaire, not as a man offering a contract, but as someone who revealed something he could have kept hidden, one thought settles clearly in her mind. This arrangement was never what it seemed, and neither is he. The silence after his confession does not break immediately. It lingers, stretching between them like something fragile that neither of them wants to disturb too quickly. Maya does not step back. She does not turn away, but something in her posture shifts, not distance, not rejection, but recalibration, because the man standing in front of her is no longer just the one who offered her a contract. He is someone who revealed a truth that changes the entire foundation of why she is here. And that truth does not make things simpler. It makes them more complicated in a way that cannot be ignored. She studies him carefully, not searching for weakness, but for honesty, for consistency between what he said and what he is showing now. "How long?" she asks quietly, and the question is not vague. It is precise. "How long have you known?" Ethan exhales slowly, not out of discomfort, but out of the weight of answering something he rarely speaks about. "Long enough," he replies. And there is something in the way he says it that tells her this is not recent. This is not something he is still processing. It is something he has already built walls around. structured his life around, adapted to in ways that no longer require explanation. Maya nods slightly, absorbing that. Then why now? She asks. And that question lands differently, because it is not about the condition itself. It is about the timing, the decision to act on it, the choice to bring her into it. Ethan looks at her, and for a moment, he does not answer, not because he cannot, but because this is the part that is not clean, not structured, not something he can present as a simple equation. Because I ran out of time, he says finally, and the honesty of it is direct, unpolished, almost abrupt. Maya's brow tightens slightly, not in confusion, but in recognition. Time for what? She asks, and now he has to say it. Not in the language of business, not in the language of control, but in something closer to truth, to build something that lasts. He replies, and the words are simple, but they carry more than just intention. They carry urgency, something that has been driving him quietly. Beneath everything else, Maya lets that settle, her mind moving through it. Not just what he said, but what he did not say, because this is not just about legacy. It is about fear, the kind that does not show itself openly, but shapes decisions in ways that feel logical on the surface. She takes a step back then, not to leave, but to create space, to think clearly, because this is no longer just about what she agreed to. It is about what she is stepping into, and she needs to understand it fully. You should have trusted me with that before I signed anything, she says, her voice calm but firm, and there is no accusation in it, only truth. Ethan nods once. I know, he replies, and there is no defense, no attempt to redirect, just acceptance. And that matters, because it shows her something she did not expect, that he is capable of acknowledging where he failed without trying to control the outcome of that acknowledgement. The room feels different now, not because anything has changed physically, but because the dynamic between them has shifted again, deeper this time, more complex. Maya walks a few steps toward the window, her reflection faintly visible in the glass, layered over the darkness outside, and she looks at it, not critically, not uncertainly, but thoughtfully, because she is seeing herself in this situation with clearer eyes now, not as someone who stepped into a deal, but as someone who stepped into a truth she was not fully given. And that matters. She turns back to him after a moment, her expression steady. If this is about building something real, she says slowly, then it cannot be built on half-truths. Ethan meets her gaze, and there is no hesitation in his response. It will not be, he says, and the certainty in his voice is not controlled. It is chosen, and that difference is subtle but significant. Maya studies him for a moment longer. Then she nods once, not as agreement, not yet, but as acknowledgement, because trust is not something that appears instantly. It is something that forms over time, through actions, through consistency, through moments like this where truth is placed on the table without being forced. I am still here, she says, and the simplicity of that statement carries more weight than anything else she could have said, because it is not a promise, it is not a guarantee, it is a choice, one she is making in this moment, and that choice shifts something inside Ethan in a way he does not fully expect. Not relief, not exactly, but something close to it, something that feels less like control and more like connection, even if he does not yet know how to define it. Then we move forward, he says, and there is a quiet steadiness in his voice now, something that was not there before, because this is no longer just about executing a plan. It is about navigating something that cannot be fully planned. Maya nods slightly. Then we move forward honestly, she replies, and that becomes the condition, not written in the contract, not defined by any clause, but understood between them. The silence that follows is no longer heavy, no longer uncertain. It is settled, grounded, as if something has been realigned in a way that makes the next step possible. Maya walks toward the door slowly, then pauses, her hand resting lightly on the frame, and she looks back at him, her expression calm but clear. Do not mistake my staying for agreement with everything you have done, she says, and the words are not harsh, not cold, but precise, because they define the boundary she is maintaining. Ethan inclines his head slightly. I will not, he replies, and there is no resistance in that, only understanding. Maya nods once, then steps out into the hallway, leaving him standing there for a moment longer. And as the door closes quietly behind her, Ethan remains still, not because he does not know what to do next, but because for the first time in a long time, he is aware that what comes next is not entirely his to control, and that realization does not unsettle him the way it might have before. Instead, it grounds him, because somewhere in the space between structure and uncertainty, something real has begun to take shape, and he knows now that if he wants it to last, he cannot treat it like a transaction. He has to treat it like something worth choosing every day. The next morning does not feel like a continuation. It feels like a test, quiet but unmistakable, as if everything that was said the night before is now waiting to be proven through action rather than words. Maya wakes earlier than the house, the silence still thick, the light just beginning to stretch across the glass walls. And for a moment she stays still, not because she is uncertain, but because she is aware that this is the point where intentions begin to either hold or fall apart. She gets up slowly, moves through the space with the same quiet control she has carried since the beginning, and instead of waiting for the house to direct her, she walks toward the part of it she has not yet explored, because if she is going to be here, truly here, then she needs to understand it on her own terms. The hallway leads her past closed doors, past carefully curated spaces, until she reaches a room that feels different the moment she steps inside. Not larger, not more expensive, but more lived in, the lighting softer, the arrangement less precise, as if this part of the house was not built for display, but for something else entirely. Her eyes move slowly across the room, taking in the details, books not perfectly aligned, a chair slightly angled, a space that feels like it belongs to someone rather than something. And then she sees it, a small frame on a side table, simple, almost out of place among everything else. She steps closer, not rushing, just drawn, and when she looks at it, her expression shifts, not dramatically, but enough to reveal that something has reached her. It is a drawing, not perfect, not polished, but meaningful, a child's handwriting at the bottom reading a name, Noah, and beneath it, a sentence written with uneven letters, I love you, Daddy. Maya's breath stills for just a second, not because she does not understand, but because she understands too clearly, and suddenly, the pieces from the night before begin to connect in a way that feels deeper than she expected. This was never just about legacy, never just about structure. It was about something that had been lost, something that had not been replaced. She sets the frame back exactly where she found it, not because she is afraid to touch it, but because she respects what it represents. And as she turns, she finds Ethan standing in the doorway, not startled, not defensive, just still, as if he has been there long enough to see what she saw. Neither of them speaks immediately, because there is no easy way to step into this moment, no structured way to explain something that was never meant to be explained out loud. He was my son, Ethan says. Finally, his voice quieter than she has ever heard it, not controlled, not measured, just real. Maya does not react quickly. She lets the words settle, lets the truth expand in the space between them, and when she speaks, her voice carries the same quiet steadiness. What happened? She asks, not pushing, not demanding, just opening the space for him to answer if he chooses to. Ethan exhales slowly, not out of reluctance, but out of memory, something that does not come easily even after time has passed. Illness, he says, simple, direct, and yet it carries more weight than any detailed explanation could. Maya nods slightly, not because she understands the experience, but because she understands the impact, the absence that remains long after something is gone. And in that moment, she sees him differently, not as a man trying to control an outcome, but as someone who once lost something he could not control at all. And that changes everything. You are not trying to replace him, she says. Softly, more statement than question. Ethan shakes his head slightly. No, he replies, and there is no hesitation, only certainty. I am trying to make sure something like that does not end with me. Maya holds his gaze, and for the first time since this began, the silence between them feels like understanding rather than distance, because now the reason behind everything is no longer abstract. It is personal, deeply personal, and that shifts the weight of her decision in a way she did not anticipate. She takes a step closer, not carefully, not cautiously, just naturally. And when she speaks again, her voice is steady but softer. Then this cannot be just about continuing a name, she says. It has to be about building something that matters. Ethan looks at her, really looks at her, and for a moment, there is no defense in his expression, no control, just recognition. Because she has said something he has not been able to articulate himself, something he has been trying to reach through structure and planning but could not fully define. You are right, he says quietly, and the words feel different this time. Not like agreement, but like acceptance, and that acceptance changes the space between them again, not dramatically, but deeply. Maya nods once. Then we build it the right way, she says, and there is no hesitation in her tone, because this is not about the contract anymore. It is about the meaning behind it. Ethan inclines his head slightly, and for the first time, the movement feels less like acknowledgement and more like respect, and as they stand there, in a room that holds more truth than any other part of the house, one thing becomes clear to both of them. This was never meant to be just an arrangement. It was always meant to become something real, something neither of them fully understood when it began, but something they are now choosing to shape together. The days that follow do not feel rushed. They feel intentional, as if something unspoken has shifted the rhythm of everything inside the house. The silence is still there. The structure is still there, but now it carries something else, presence. Maya moves through the space not as a guest, not as someone adapting, but as someone who has begun to shape it. Small changes at first, a chair turned toward the window instead of away from it, a conversation started instead of avoided, moments that seem simple but begin to fill the quiet in ways that were not there before, and Ethan notices it all, not as disruption, but as transformation, because the house no longer feels like something preserved, it feels like something lived in, and that difference settles into him in ways he does not question. He accepts it, the same way he has begun to accept her presence not as part of an arrangement, but as something far more constant. One afternoon, they stand together in the same room where everything shifted, the drawing still resting where it always has, but now it does not feel like something hidden. It feels like something acknowledged, something that belongs in the present as much as it belongs in the past. Maya looks at it briefly before turning to him, her expression steady. We cannot build something meaningful if we are still holding on to fear, she says, and the words are not heavy, not dramatic, but they carry truth. Ethan meets her gaze, and for the first time, there is no resistance to that idea, only understanding. I am not afraid of what comes next, he says, and the statement is quiet, but certain. Maya studies him for a moment, then nods slightly. Then do not treat this like something you have to control, she replies, and that lands deeper than anything else she has said, because control has always been his foundation, his way of ensuring that nothing unpredictable can take from him again. But standing here now, with her, he realizes something he did not expect. Control is not what kept him steady, it was distance, and distance is no longer what he wants. He exhales slowly, not out of hesitation, but out of release, and then he reaches for something on the table. Beside him, the contract, the one that defined everything at the beginning, still intact, still precise, still representing a version of this that no longer fits. Maya's eyes move to it, and for a moment, neither of them speaks, because they both understand what it means without needing to explain it. Ethan looks at her, not asking for permission, but acknowledging the choice that needs to be made, and then, without hesitation, he tears it. The sound quiet but final, the paper splitting cleanly. Not in anger, not in impulse, but in certainty. Maya watches, her expression unchanged but her eyes steady, because this is not about the paper, it is about what it represents, and as the pieces fall onto the table, something else settles between them, something that is no longer structured, no longer defined by terms, but chosen, every part of it. This was never going to be enough, Ethan says quietly, and there is no regret in his voice, only clarity. Maya nods once. Then we do it without it, she replies, and the simplicity of that statement carries more weight than any agreement they signed, because it is not about obligation, it is about decision, and that is what makes it real. The moment stretches, not in uncertainty, but in understanding, because both of them know that what they are stepping into now is not guaranteed, not protected by clauses or conditions, but it is honest, and that honesty is something neither of them had at the beginning. Ethan looks at her, and for the first time, there is no distance in his gaze, no control, no calculation, just something steady and present. Stay, he says, not as a demand, not as an expectation, but as an offer. And Maya does not answer immediately, not because she is unsure, but because she understands the weight of that word. Now, it is not about the house, not about the life. It is about him, about what they are choosing to build together. She takes a step closer, her posture relaxed but grounded. I already did, she replies, and the quiet certainty in her voice leaves no room for doubt. Because she did not stay for the contract. She did not stay for the promise of stability. She stayed because she chose to. And that choice changes everything. The light from the window shifts slightly, casting a softer glow across the room. And for the first time, the space does not feel empty. It feels full, not with objects, not with design, but with something far more difficult to create. Something that cannot be planned or controlled. Something that exists only when it is chosen. And as they stand there, no longer separated by terms or expectations, one truth becomes clear. This was never about a deal. It was about what happens when two people stop trying to control the outcome and start choosing each other instead. And in that choice, something real finally begins.